Howard, the NAFTA trade deal has been in place for about 20 years, and it's responsible for sending millions of U.S. jobs out of the country. Now there's this new, even worse trade deal that our president has secretly been promoting, and it raises questions about day one, we're hearing that he is a champion of the people. Day two, he's killing jobs in the ugliest kind of way by this thing called a trade deal that really isn't a trade deal. I'm interested to know your take on it. You have been a huge supporter of this president, as I have. What's your take when you see what's unfolding here?
Well, Mike, since the past is prologue, let's take a look at NAFTA, which was 20 years ago, put in place by President Clinton and by Bob Rubin from Wall Street and by corporate America. It was opposed severely by the unions who warned us what was going to happen. The results of 20 years of NAFTA have been thousands of factories in the United States have closed, 1 million jobs have gone south to Mexico, hundreds of cities have been decimated, think Detroit. The results have been in Mexico that outfits like ADM dumped their corn into Mexico. They wiped out the peasant farmers down there. Walmart moved in big time, wiped out small businesses. Those people took on low-wage jobs that came from America. The winners were corporate America, ADM, Walmart, the usual suspects in America.
This has been a gold mine where corporate America gets all the gold and we get the shaft. Now, what's bothering me about this, and the reason I talk to you about this, you have been so active in U.S. politics at the very highest level. I know we have done interviews where you've talked and supported this president. Isn't this the underbelly about what this man is really all about? And I want to preface it by saying this. Follow the money on this story. The day Obama got into office, understand, it was the Penny Pritzker money that put him there. It was the Robert Rubin money that put him there. It was the drug industry money that put him there. This TPP has nothing to do, really, out of 29 chapters, whether there are 5 chapters that have to do with trade, kind of. This is like a pigs at the trough feeding for Wall Street and all these other supporters of the president, isn't it?
Well, it absolutely is. Of course, it was put in place initially by Bush, but that was in 2008, in his last year. If you look at the essence of this thing, you find it in the secrecy. There's been no public discussion of this. The Congress has not even been given copies of this agreement until recently. The people who have seen it have been the administration and 600 corporate trade advisors. Now, why the secrecy? The secrecy is because there would be public outrage if the public knew what was in this. And President Obama is now asking Congress to fast track this through the Congress, which means that in Congress, you get no hearings, essentially. You get no negotiations. You get a straight up or down, yes or no vote. And frankly, you're right. I was a big supporter, full disclosure. I was a big supporter of the president. But You've met with the president on occasion. You've told him your concerns about issues like this. And the reason I go here, Howard, is because you have Hillary Clinton right behind him that is exactly attracting the same money. Now, here's what I'm curious about. This thing has taken place in total secrecy. It's taken place as if there is some type of deadline that we have to, some urgency deadline. And when you really analyze this, Howard, it appears to me that the only urgency deadline is they want this to happen while Obama is still in office. And I don't know how else to look at this. I mean, there is no urgency to the idea of offshoring millions of American jobs or rolling back Wall Street reforms or, sneaking in a SOPA-like threats to the internet system or exposing U.S. citizens to unsafe products. What is the urgency here? And so that is, I think, the heart of what this is about. The urgency to me is they know that Obama has been ordered to do this, has been pushed around to do this, and he's saying, I'm willing to do this, but he's almost out of time. I don't know how else to see a sense of urgency here. Well, you're absolutely right. Back to your point about there only being 5 provisions out of 29 that have to do with trade. The other 24 provisions have to do with corporate protectionism. And there's an aspect of this thing that is just totally outrageous. The United States federal, state, and local policies have to comply with the TPP rules. I mean, this is a super rule set that goes above the rules passed by our federal government, by our state and local governments.
Explain that a little bit. Explain how extreme this is.
Well, first of all, there's another thing it does which is totally outrageous. It elevates corporations to sovereign status. They're empowered, the corporations, the banks are empowered to enforce the rules. And the way they do this, they sue the United States in foreign tribunals. If our policies are not in accord with international law, then the corporations are empowered to sue the U.S. in foreign tribunals, and the U.S. has a choice to either change our policy or use taxpayer money to pay to those corporations their expected future profits that our laws deny them. It's unbelievable.
Look, let's go down the list here. Food safety, no question. Everybody who's analyzed this says food safety is at risk because the regulations are such that we have to fall to the lowest common denominator. Right. If Pango is part of this agreement and Pango doesn't have food safety regulations, then we have to comply with their non-regulation. Fracking. Already we're seeing cases where in Canada, foreign oil companies are suing Canadian sovereigns and saying, you have laws that say we can't frack. You know what? We're going to sue you about it. And they've sued one area in Quebec for $250 million. Jobs, you have U.S. corporations that are going to get bonuses. They're going to get tax breaks for sending jobs out of this country. Drug prices. How about this? We're not going to be able to control drug prices at all under this new agreement. As a matter of fact, you're going to give the drug industry the opportunity to distribute their drug for a longer period of time by holding the patent longer, and they're going to be able to interfere with the generic drugs moving onto the market. And we're not going to be able to limit them in any kind of way on prices. So banksters, same thing. Wall Street gets this free ride because all of the regulations that we've kind of put in place, they're not really in place, but that we've talked about putting in place because of the theft that took place, the $10 trillion theft that Wall Street pulled off. Those regulations we're not even going to be able to put in place. I don't know how it is that this president can say he was a populist. He gave the impression that he was a true populist, and now look at what's happened here. To me, it's over with my thinking things are going to get better with this president. I don't know about you. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that this entire thing is a government-corporate partnership that is nothing more or less than corporate protectionism. Under these provisions, the usual suspects win: the banks, the oil industry, the manufacturers, big pharma, big business, and the politicians who rely on corporations for contributions for their campaigns. The losers are the American public. We're going to increase job loss in America. You're going to increase the divide between the rich and the poor. You're going to increase the corporate control of our daily lives. The question is, where's the press? This came out from WikiLeaks. Now,
very important point, Howard. You've come on this show and you've talked about how the media has become dysfunctional because it's owned by corporations. I remember you did the story last year where we talked about that in the mid 80s, about 50 or 60 independent organizations owned the media. Now it's down to 4. So corporate media has no interest in telling this story, and that's you've stood by that position for a very long time, and we're seeing it right here, aren't we?
Well, you know, Mike, I've always been opposed to WikiLeaks because of leaking things that might have to do with national security. I was in the military intelligence. I was in the Army Security Agency. I know the importance of American secrets, but I got to tell you, I am with WikiLeaks on this one because the press, the political leaders, no one has covered this story. No one is touching this story. And then we wouldn't be talking about it now.
Howard. The corporate media wants this. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, because you're not going to see it on 60 Minutes because 60 Minutes is owned by corporate America. You're not going to see it in the New York Times because they're owned by corporate America. The political leaders are not going to raise the issue because they're owned by corporate America.
Well, what we have is a situation, we're going to lose jobs, we're going to have Detroits popping up all over the country, because what the heart of this is, the very heart, is that American corporations get treated to bonuses, tax breaks, subsidies of all kinds to send jobs out of this country, to send manufacturing out of this country, to destabilize unions in this country, and actually help the middle class disappear. Howard Nations, thank you for joining me. We're going to have a great year this year. We're going to be talking about stories this important every single week, and you are always the person to bring them to us. Thank you for joining me.